I took my wife dancing to reconnect, and watched her walk away with a movie star instead. That night didn't just break my heart, it uncovered a secret that changed everything. I figured a night of dancing might rekindle that spark between me and my wife. I never imagined she'd walk out with someone else before the night was over. What started as a light-hearted evening turned into the unraveling of everything I thought we had. When a movie star asked her to dance, she didn't even pause, and that single moment kicked off the worst chapter of my life. My wife, Emily, has always had this deep, almost childlike love for films. It didn't take much to make her happy, just take her to the movies. But not just any movie would do. It had to be in one of 4 categories: animated, action-packed, adventurous, or dramatic. Her true favorite, though, was romance. Those heartfelt love stories, the ones people often mock as girly, were the ones that touched her the most. She especially adored actors like Nate Benson, Ryan Kyle, and Blake Monroe. If one of them was in a film, it was an automatic must-watch for her. Our very first date was at a screening of Snooze in Seattle. Emily was never big on Tom Hanks, but something about that film's story captivated her. Years later, she told me that night was when she really fell in love with me. I still don't know what it was exactly about that film or that evening, but it left a mark that lasted over a decade. Even now, Emily looks just as stunning as she did back then. She's tall and lean, and she moves with this graceful ease that always drew attention. Her deep green eyes practically glow against her auburn hair, and when she's dressed up, she can light up a room without even trying. As for me, I'm Michael Harper. I'm no slouch either. Tall, sturdy build, sandy blonde hair and blue eyes. Folks often told us we were one of those couples that looked like they belonged in a magazine. Back when I was in college, I never really had trouble finding dates, but something changed the day I met Emily. I just knew I wanted her beside me for the rest of my life. And I truly believed she felt that same pull toward me. We first met in high school and grew close fast, falling hard for each other. That love only deepened through our college years. Not long after we graduated, we got married, just 3 months later. To me, Emily isn't just my partner, she's my best friend, the person I felt most at home with. I honestly couldn't imagine a life without her. And while our daughters bring us more joy than we ever thought possible, they've also made it harder to find alone time. That's why tonight meant so much to us. It was a rare evening just for the two of us. A night to dance, laugh, and forget about responsibilities. We had arranged to go out in the city with 3 other couples, enjoy some drinks, and stay the night at a downtown hotel. My parents kindly offered to keep our girls, and both Emily and I were genuinely excited for a break. But from the moment we stepped into the club, I felt something wasn't quite right. There was no clear reason, I just felt off. The women seemed slightly preoccupied, and one of the guys had this cocky air about him that didn't sit right with me. Among the group we went out with, I felt closest to Matt and Rachel, and also Greg and Linda. Matt worked in tech and Rachel was a stay-at-home mom raising 3 kids. Greg ran his own plumbing company and Linda managed all the office stuff. They were both solid, down-to-earth couples we always enjoyed being around. The only couple I never fully clicked with was Lance and Carla. I never had any issue with Carla, she was sweet, but Lance always gave me an uneasy vibe. I couldn't quite pin it down. But since Emily and Carla were close friends from college and kept in touch all these years, I learned to put up with him. If I remember right, Lance had some vague tie to the film world. He once mentioned being a talent agent or something like that, but it didn't sound like he was doing particularly well. On the other hand, Carla worked a high-paying job in pharmaceuticals and seemed to be the one holding up their household financially. I work as a financial advisor at a respected firm. It wasn't easy getting here, but over time I built a solid client base. These days, I'm at a point where I mentor newcomers and slowly pass off accounts. Of course, I keep the highest-grossing ones for myself. I'd already gone through that process twice and it looked like another round was coming. Professionally, things are going great for me. It took years of dedication and long hours, but I've reached a good place. Emily used to work as an assistant to Eric McNeil, who was a top executive at a regional bank. After our daughters came, one just a year after the other, she chose to stay home and raise them until our youngest, Molly, started school. We made that decision together and I admired her for it. Not long after Molly began first grade, an unexpected offer came her way. Eric had been promoted to bank president and wanted someone reliable by his side. He offered Emily a part-time role and she took her time thinking it over. I stood by her every step of the way. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, no, she wasn't having an affair with her boss. Eric is in his 60s, completely bald, and absolutely devoted to his wife and 5 kids. He's not the problem. Despite my strange gut feeling earlier in the evening, I pushed it aside. I didn't want to ruin what was supposed to be a beautiful night out with Emily. We danced. We mingled. The evening was going fine, at least on the surface. We ran into some familiar faces, regulars at these kinds of events. It was nice catching up. We even bumped into an old college buddy, Keith Daniels, and his wife, Melissa. While Emily and the other women wandered off to chat, Keith and I stayed back and talked for a bit. That's when something unusual happened. The music had just started playing when a ripple of energy spread through the room. People craned their necks toward the entrance. Something, or someone, had definitely caught their attention. Standing next to me, Melissa gasped softly, her eyes wide with disbelief. Keith looked at her, puzzled. "What is it?" he asked. Melissa couldn't take her eyes off the entrance. "You don't recognize him?" she whispered, almost breathless. I followed her gaze, and standing at the doorway was an incredibly good-looking man. Shorter than I expected, but undeniably magnetic. Keith and I looked at each other, both of us equally clueless. "That's Cole Hart." Melissa nearly squealed, unable to hide her excitement. "He and his fiancée, Jenna Rose, are one of Hollywood's biggest couples right now." Keith squinted toward the door. "Think Jenna's here too?" Melissa laughed and gave him a playful nudge. "Mike, Jenna Rose is like a 12 on a 10-point scale," she said, teasing him before giving his arm a light smack. "Of course you'd be hoping she's here." I couldn't help but chuckle at Melissa and Keith's playful back and forth, but my focus stayed locked on Cole. He wasn't just another actor in a suit, he happened to be one of Emily's longtime favorites. For a brief second I even considered approaching him, maybe getting an autograph for her. But that thought was quickly pushed aside by something that blindsided me. To my absolute disbelief, Cole started walking directly toward our group. And without missing a beat, he looked straight at Emily and asked her to dance. No introduction. No awkward small talk. Just a bold, confident invitation. And what stunned me even more than his audacity was how effortlessly Emily accepted. She didn't even glance in my direction. Didn't ask me if it was okay. She simply reached out, took his hand, and followed him onto the dance floor like it was the most natural thing in the world. I felt my jaw tighten as I sat there watching them, my wife and a celebrity, swaying under the soft, colored lights. I could feel irritation start to burn inside me. One song turned into two, then three. By the fourth, I wasn't just annoyed, I felt humiliated. She seemed completely lost in that moment, totally unaware, or maybe uncaring, of how I was feeling. By the fifth track, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, ready to go find her, to say something, anything, but then, out of nowhere, Lance's glass tipped off the table. It shattered, and he let out a pained grunt, gripping his hand tightly. "Mike, could you give me a hand here?" he asked, holding up a bleeding palm. For a second I didn't move. My eyes flicked back and forth. Emily was still out there, dancing with Cole like they were old friends. But Lance was already standing, blood dripping from his hand. I let out a sigh, swallowed my pride, and followed him to the restroom to help him clean up. Thankfully it wasn't serious. A small gash, deep enough to bleed but nothing that required stitches. I helped him wash it and wrapped it as best I could using the first aid kit from the bathroom. But just as we were finishing up, we heard a noise, raised voices coming from the main room. When we stepped out, chaos had taken over. Fred was already in the middle of it, trying to calm everyone down. Thelma was screaming. Chad, her husband, looked like he was ready to swing at someone. I barely had time to register what was happening before things escalated. A shove. A loud crash. Then someone yelling that they had called the police. Within 10 minutes, officers showed up. They started asking questions, trying to piece together what went wrong. Fred stuck to the facts, and I backed his version completely, making it clear that Chad had been the one stirring things up. By then, curious onlookers had gathered, whispering and pointing. Whatever this night was supposed to be, it was long gone. Inside, I was begging, pleading, that Emily hadn't become another one of Cole's conquests. But Fred wasn't hopeful. He looked at me and said quietly, "Brace yourself, man. This might get ugly." His warning sent a chill right through me. Trying to stay composed, I nodded. "I'll be fine," I told him. But deep down, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Back at the table, I pulled out my phone and called Emily. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. I called again, same result. The pit in my stomach grew heavier. When I finally sat back down, the atmosphere had changed completely. The wives looked uncomfortable, exchanging guilty glances. Their husbands just shook their heads, clearly disapproving. The night had spiraled out of control. And then, just as the group was getting ready to head back to the hotel, Emily returned. She walked in with a beaming smile, glowing like someone who had just won a dream vacation. But the moment she locked eyes with me, the joy drained from her face. "We didn't do anything," she said quickly, almost breathless. We just talked, nothing else. I should have checked with you, but I knew you wouldn't have let me go. Her voice sounded rehearsed, like she'd been practicing that line in her head. I stood there, stunned, caught between shock and rage. You know how much I adore movies, she went on, her voice trembling slightly. Cole Hart's been one of my favorite actors for years. It felt like something out of a dream. But it wasn't like that, Mike. Nothing crossed the line. I love you. That hasn't changed. My chest tightened. My hands were clenched. And then, without meaning to, the words left my mouth. Go pack your things. You're going to your parents' place. She looked at me startled. Mike, please, I heard what you said. I cut her off sharply. But what you did tonight was wrong. You walked out with another man, stayed with him all night, ignored my calls, and only came back when the fantasy was over. Her eyes filled with tears. I thought once you knew it was innocent you'd understand. We need to work through this, for our girls. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. Oh, now you're thinking about Molly and Rachel? Were they on your mind when you left the club with a man you just met? My voice was shaking now. How would you feel if one day Rachel did something like this to her husband? Her face crumpled at my words. The weight of what she'd done seemed to finally hit her. She dropped her gaze and broke down. I'm so sorry, Mike, she whispered, her voice barely audible through the tears. I didn't think. I never meant to hurt you like this. I didn't know what to believe anymore. She kept insisting it was innocent, but something didn't sit right. My gut was screaming that there was more to the story than she was letting on. Could I ever forgive her? Maybe, if it had stayed between us, maybe if the whole night hadn't exploded online for everyone to see. But now, it felt like we had crossed a line we couldn't return from. A dark part of me started fantasizing about revenge, not just against her but against Cole too. But every scenario I imagined felt pointless and self-destructive. I was stuck, consumed by betrayal, drowning in doubt. And then my phone rang. Hello, is this Michael Harper? A woman's voice asked. Yes, I said cautiously, sitting upright. This is Jenna Rose, she replied. I'm Cole Hart's fiancée. Her name hit me like a slap. Of course she'd found out too. Yes, I know who he is, I said, not hiding the irritation in my voice. I was already emotionally spent and didn't want more drama. Do you still love your wife? She asked, straight to the point. I took a deep breath. Even after everything, yeah, I do. But I don't know how we come back from this. There was silence on her end. Then she spoke again, more carefully this time. What if I told you I might have a way to help you fix things, with your wife and with Cole? My heart started racing. I had no idea what she meant, but I was desperate enough to listen. Okay, I said slowly. What are you thinking? Jenna exhaled before continuing. I've been with Cole a long time. And believe me, I know what he's capable of. I was cautious for years, but after we got engaged, he swore to me that those days were over. When I asked him about your wife, he told me nothing happened between them. But, she paused, I can't confirm that's the truth. I could hear the tremble in Jenna's voice, and it mirrored the same uncertainty clawing at my own heart. My wife's saying the same, I admitted, my voice low. She swears it was harmless. But I don't know how to trust her again. That part of me feels broken. If you're open to trying, Jenna replied, then I might have a way forward. I leaned forward, already desperate for something, anything, that could make sense of this chaos. What do you need me to do? As soon as Emily's back, have a quiet lunch with her. Keep things calm. I'll speak with Cole separately, she said. There are a few pieces I still need to lock in, but once they are, we'll put the whole picture together. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was more than I had. And honestly, I didn't have the energy to come up with a better one. All right, I said after a pause. Let's see what happens. Before Emily could do anything on her end, I decided to get ahead of the situation. First, I called my parents and told them I'd be there in half an hour to pick up the girls. Then I messaged my assistant, Jamie, and let her know I'd be working from home for the next week. I needed space, to breathe, to think, to navigate through the emotional wreckage I was buried under. At my parents' house, the girls were full of questions, their little faces lit up with curiosity. I didn't give them any heavy details. Instead, I smiled and said we were going to Chuck E. Cheese. Their excitement was instant, and for a few hours I watched them play and laugh like the world was still right. I clung to that moment. It reminded me that some things were still untouched. When we got home, the house felt cold, even with their giggles echoing through it. As I unlocked the front door, the landline started ringing. The number was unfamiliar, so I let it go. But it kept ringing, every 5 minutes like clockwork. After a while, I'd had enough and just unplugged the thing entirely. Around 6 p.m. my cell rang. It was Emily. "Why haven't you been answering?" she asked, irritation creeping through her voice. "Because I'm tired of hearing from reporters asking about your so-called Hollywood romance," I answered flatly. I didn't want to argue, I just wanted clarity, some kind of resolution. She was quiet for a beat. Then her tone softened. "Mike, are you really going to take the girls and leave?" "If that's the way this is heading, yeah," I said calmly, already mentally preparing to walk out again. "No," she blurted out, her voice catching. "Please, can we talk? Can we try to work through this?" While she pleaded, the girls were tossing things into their little suitcases, excited to go back to Grandma and Grandpa's. Emily had told them it'd be a fun weekend away. Then she turned to me, eyes wide and unsure. "What now?" she asked. I rubbed my hands over my face. "I honestly don't know. I'm angry, confused, and honestly I feel betrayed. So unless you've got a roadmap for this, I'm out of ideas." She took a shaky breath. "Look, with all the media attention, the way people are spinning this, if you try for full custody, the courts will probably side with you. I know that. You're seen as the stable one. Just, please don't take it there. I'll do whatever it takes to fix what's broken." I let out a bitter laugh. "Fix it? Emily, I'm not even sure where to start." "I get that," she said quickly. "But maybe we can talk more next Sunday? After you drop the girls back off?" Then, with a slight shift in her voice, firmer now, colder, she added, "But if you push for custody, if you drag this out in court, I won't sit still. I'll file for divorce right away." The sudden change in tone hit me like a slap. One minute she's in tears. The next she's issuing ultimatums. Then, as if it were just another evening, she added, "Dinner? Tonight. Zoom restaurant. 7 o'clock. Formal attire." And before I could even respond, she hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, baffled. Later that evening, I heard from Jenna again, and what she told me left me stunned. She had managed to get us a table at Zoom, the most exclusive restaurant in the entire city. It usually took months to land a reservation there. The prices were astronomical and the wait list was endless. And somehow she pulled it off in a few hours. I arrived right at 7 o'clock. The maitre d' greeted me by name and escorted me to a private dining suite tucked away in the back. The room was elegant, floor-length velvet drapes, flickering candlelight, soft jazz playing just loud enough to mask the hum of the main dining hall. It was romantic, polished, and oddly intimidating. But I wasn't here for the ambience. I needed answers. Jenna sat across from me, poised and thoughtful. Once dinner plates were cleared, she leaned back, studying me for a moment before she spoke. "Let's get to the root of this mess, Mike," she said, her voice low and even. "This entire disaster? It was set in motion by none other than Chad Tompkins." I furrowed my brow. "Chad? What are you talking about?" She swirled her wine, then looked me square in the eye. "He plays the role of a Hollywood agent, but that's just a front. The truth? He's a well-dressed predator. A manipulator. He creates these opportunities, intimate setups that lure married women into compromising situations with celebrities. He's been doing it for years." I stared at her in disbelief. "You're saying Emily was set up?" "I'm saying she was targeted," Jenna said. "She was part of Chad's little scheme. Whether she fell willingly or not, that's still unclear. But this wasn't some random encounter. It was engineered. It was a gut punch. The anger in me didn't vanish, but it shifted, aimed more at Chad than before. And yet, I still couldn't shake the question. Did Emily knowingly go along with it? Or was she blindsided like I was? "What are you proposing?" I asked, needing to see where this was going. She leaned in, her gaze steady. "First, let's be clear, you're a good-looking man, charming, successful. Your wife made a reckless decision. And to be honest," she gave me a sly smile, "in another life I might have been interested myself." I chuckled quietly, a little uncomfortable. "Appreciate the compliment, Jenna. But you and I both know, we're from different worlds." She smiled and nodded. "Fair enough." Then her face turned serious. "Here's my idea. Tell Emily that I'm one of your clients. Keep seeing her under the guise of counseling, sorting things out. Let her move back in after 2 weeks, but keep your distance. No intimacy. No forgiveness yet. Let her sit in that tension." I nodded slowly, following her logic. "Then," she continued, "on October 15th, I want both of you to attend a charity gala I help organize. It's a high society event. Only the elite get in. I usually attend every other year. This year, I'll be there." I tilted my head. "And this helps how?" She leaned closer, her voice dropping. Because that night the truth will come out. I'll make sure of it. And your wife. She'll see exactly what Chad did, along with everyone else. Then she added, every year we hold a charity auction at the gala. Wealthy guests bid on once-in-a-lifetime experiences. It's a tradition for couples to attend together. If a husband is auctioned off, his wife is expected to bid, and win. The implication hung in the air. You want Emily to bid on me? I asked. Jenna smirked. I want to see if she's willing to fight for you, in front of everyone. She paused, watching me closely, almost as if she was waiting for the weight of her next words to land. But this year we're doing something different, she said with quiet certainty. A married man will be auctioned off, and his wife won't place a bid. I blinked, trying to make sense of what she was hinting at. Okay, but what's the point of that? I asked, still piecing it all together. Jenna gave a faint smile, cool and calm but knowing. Let's just say the fallout from that moment won't go unnoticed. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but my thoughts were spinning. She spoke with such conviction, like she knew exactly what was going to unfold and how it would all expose something neither of us could unsee. Sensing my inner conflict, Jenna let out a small laugh and gently patted my hand. Relax, Mike, she said lightly. That married man? It's going to be you. I blinked at her, unsure if I'd heard correctly. Come again? She leaned back looking amused. You'll be part of the auction. It's a test, and your wife is the one being tested. If Emily truly wants to rebuild this marriage, she won't think twice before making a bid. But if she doesn't, her voice faded, letting the silence finish the sentence for her. In the days leading up to the gala, I stuck to our plan. I met with Emily under the guise of working through our relationship like Jenna suggested. The talks were civil, even warm at times, but the closeness we once shared wasn't there anymore. Something had fractured between us, something I couldn't put back together with small talk and nostalgia. Meanwhile, I spent more time with Jenna. Sometimes Brad joined us, usually cracking jokes, always trying to lighten the mood, but underneath his charm there was an edge. Jenna clearly cared about him, but she also made it clear. If he slipped again, she wouldn't hesitate to walk. A week before the gala, I told Emily she could move back into the house. I took the guest room. She looked disappointed, but she didn't push back. Maybe she thought that was progress. Then came the night of the gala. We walked into the ballroom as a couple, dressed to the nines. Emily looked breathtaking in a floor-length navy dress, every eye in the room following her. But no matter how stunning she looked, I couldn't ignore the hollowness between us. I'd seen Jenna and Brad just minutes earlier, the way they moved together, the spark between them. Emily and I didn't have that anymore. At least not right now. As we settled at our table, the MC took the stage. The first items up for bid were vacation packages, fine art, exotic wines. The crowd was animated and the bids were generous. But I was waiting for my moment, the moment Jenna had carefully planned. At one point, I leaned toward Emily and gestured toward the auction table. It's a fundraiser and the tickets were free, I said lightly. How about I sign up for the auction and you bid on me? She gave a half laugh, but it lacked joy. I didn't bring any cash, she said, holding up her tiny purse. Couldn't even fit my wallet in this thing. She was joking, but her tone made my stomach tighten. Something felt off. And in that instant I realized she was walking right into Jenna's setup. I pulled out my wallet, took out a stack of bills and handed them to her. Here. $1,000. You won't need all of it, probably just a few hundred. But since it's for a good cause, throw in at least 200. She hesitated just briefly, then nodded and took the money. The room buzzed with energy as celebrities and elite guests mingled and cheered for the auction winners. Finally, they called all male participants backstage. I gave Emily a reassuring look, then disappeared behind the curtain. There were 24 of us in total. I had no doubt Jenna had arranged for me to be last. Backstage, I watched the numbers climb, $10,000 for a dinner date, $18,000 for a weekend yacht trip. The bids were far beyond what I had expected. By the time I walked onto that stage, over $300,000 had already been raised. Our final gentleman tonight, the host announced, is a local resident, and someone we're thrilled to welcome. The crowd erupted in applause. I stood under the spotlight, waiting. The first bid came in, $500. Then $1,000. Soon $5,000. Then $10,000. It kept going. At $25,000, my nerves kicked in. I scanned the room, searching for Emily. She was still. Motionless. Her hand clutched her purse tightly. She didn't raise a paddle. She didn't speak. Then, from across the room, a familiar voice called out, clear, confident. $100,000. A collective gasp swept through the room. All eyes turned to the woman who had made the bid. Jenna rose. The host stumbled over his next words, clearly stunned. We have a bid of $100,000. Applause exploded. Emily didn't move. Her face was pale, her mouth slightly parted. She hadn't even tried. My chest sank. I had my answer. The night unraveled from there. People clapped, shook hands, took photos. Somewhere in the middle of it, I ended up at Jenna's home, a sprawling estate just a few blocks from where I grew up. Funny how full circle life can feel when everything's falling apart. We arrived around 3 a.m. The house was massive, 3 stories tall, modern yet warm, elegant without trying too hard. Jenna mentioned in passing that she owned 6 properties: Hollywood, New York, Florida, 2 in Europe, and 1 tucked away in South America. I collapsed onto a velvet couch while she poured us drinks. The buzz from the night was fading, replaced by the heavy reality that Emily didn't fight. She didn't raise her hand. She let me go. Jenna sat beside me. For a moment we didn't speak. Then we looked at each other. And something changed. She leaned in. I didn't stop her. We kissed. It wasn't planned. It wasn't rushed. It just happened. Slow. Intentional. We stayed like that for 20 minutes. Close, lost in the moment, 2 broken people finding comfort in each other's presence. I hadn't felt wanted like that in a long time. Then Jenna took my hand and stood, pulling me gently to my feet. Wordlessly she led me upstairs. Inside her bedroom she turned to face me. Her lips curled into a playful smile as she began to move, soft and slow, like the rhythm was playing just for us. She danced for me. Not to seduce, not to provoke, but to remind me of something I'd forgotten. What it felt like to be chosen. In that moment I knew deep in my bones, nothing would ever return to the way it was. I sat there watching Jenna move gracefully across the floor, her rhythm smooth and fluid, her presence commanding yet comforting. Her dance wasn't seductive in the traditional sense. It was intimate, a silent invitation born of mutual understanding. The tension between us wasn't frantic or desperate. It was patient, deliberate. We weren't rushing anything. We were simply existing in each other's presence, acknowledging the storm we had weathered. As night dissolved into dawn, her laughter filled the house. Light, carefree, and infectious. For the first time in a long time, I felt a strange sense of peace. Not joy exactly, but relief. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to carry the weight alone. She got it, every ache, every misstep, every lingering doubt. For those few hours, it felt like the world had paused just long enough for me to breathe again. The next morning over breakfast, she teased me as she buttered a piece of toast. Your wife didn't seem too bothered about where you ended up last night, she said, her brow raised, a wry grin curling on her lips. I didn't have an answer for her. Maybe Emily thought I'd gone off somewhere to cool down. Maybe she was too afraid to ask. Either way, her silence told me something I hadn't wanted to hear. Jenna seemed to sense where my thoughts had gone. She reached for her coffee, stirring it slowly. I get it, she said gently. You feel betrayed and you reacted. After what Cole did, after the way Abby dismissed your feelings, you had every right to. She shared something else over that breakfast, something that surprised me. 4 years, she'd been a silent donor to the arts foundation that hosted the charity gala. Every year, she quietly gave $100,000. But this year, she said it felt right to do it differently. Publicly. Loudly. To send a message? I asked, raising an eyebrow as I set my cup down. She smiled, tapping her spoon lightly against her mug. A little drama never hurts when you're dealing with someone like Brad. Days passed and I eventually sat down with Emily again. We met at a quiet cafe, neutral ground. She looked tired, her hands twisting in her lap as she struggled to find the right words. I don't want to lose what we have, she said softly. If you're willing to fight for this marriage, counseling, rebuilding, I'm ready to try. She looked away, her cheeks flushing. The guilt still lingered in her every movement. We began attending sessions with Wendy, a therapist Jenna had recommended. She never brought up that night with Jenna, likely assuming it had been an act of retaliation. Maybe, in part, it had been. But what struck me most wasn't what Emily said in those sessions. It was what she stopped doing. She no longer talked about movies. She stopped watching them altogether. The same romantic films that had once been her comfort, her obsession, now sat untouched. I think something in her had shifted. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was clarity. Either way, she started trying, really trying, to connect with me. She showed interest in my hobbies, joined me on walks, sat beside me during football games. Things she never used to do. As for Brad, my resentment hadn't faded. Jenna told me he laughed off the auction, thought it was hilarious. In fact, he'd taken the charity paddle and framed it, hanging it in his office like a trophy. That didn't surprise me. Their relationship didn't survive the aftermath. True to her word, when Jenna confirmed that Brad was still chasing other women, she filed for divorce. It was civil, amicable even, but behind her composed exterior, I knew it had cost her something. She'd loved him. Deeply. He wasn't evil, she said once as we sat out on her patio. He just wasn't meant to belong to anyone. There was no bitterness in her tone, just acceptance. Since then we've stayed in touch. Jenna and I have this light-hearted friendship, full of banter and teasing. Sometimes she'll bring up that night, laughing as she reminds me how the evening ended. If the timing were different, she'd say, eyes twinkling, who knows where we'd be? I always laughed with her. But I knew, underneath the humor, there was a sliver of truth neither of us completely ignored. Now, as Emily and I approach our 10th anniversary, I find myself thinking back on all of it, the betrayal, the silence, the heartbreak, the unraveling and the slow rebuilding. No, our marriage isn't flawless. And it probably never will be. But somehow, through all the lies, the jealousy, and the unexpected twists, we managed to find our way back to each other. And for now, that's enough.